Welcome to the live stream. I'm Michael Brooks, and we're going to be using this Tuesday segment from time to time in the coming months to highlight a few of the candidates that are running across the country for real democratic, socialist, and progressive platforms. As you know, we've talked to Shahid Buttar on this show, to Michaela Wilkes, to Lauren Ashcroft, and I'm very happy that right now we're going to be talking with Rebecca Parson, who's running in the Democratic primary for Washington's 6th district in the great and highly rainy state of Washington. Rebecca, thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, Rebecca, just, big picture, why are you running? Who are you running against? What's it about?
Yeah, I'm running because as I started getting more involved in local activism after the 2016 election, and I did things like co-lead my local Indivisible group for a year and a half, and learned how to put pressure on our representatives to do what we want, and really, especially Democrats, actually fight for progressive priorities, actually fight for our democratic values. And what I found with my opponent, people like Derek Kilmer, who's, I found out later he's the 9th most conservative Democrat in the House, and he's also chair of the New Democrats, belongs to the Problem Solvers Caucus, so very conservative Democrat. And what I found was that pressure just wasn't working. We would just get back these kinds of vague form letters with no real answers. Nothing really changed. And I looked more into him. I saw, he's taken more than $3 million from corporate PACs. I saw that he's taken money from the companies that who manufactured the opioid epidemic, which is now just destroying our district. Not destroying, but just like ravaging people. Like, people are dying. They're waiting in line for drug treatment. They can't get in. And he takes money from the companies that have done that. And so I just looked more and more into his policies, where he takes his money from, his talking points, which are often Republican, and thought, this guy is not going to support the things we really need, like the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, a homes guarantee. And so I decided to run. And my opponent, as I said, is Derek Kilmer. And he, wields a lot of power as chair of the New Democrats. That's a position that AOC's former opponent, Joe Crowley, held a couple cycles before him. It's something you do as you're working your way up the leadership chain in Congress. It also gives you the power of the purse strings. He fundraises a lot for the New Democrats. And then he and the New Democrats funnel money out, to the DCCC, to other centrist conservative candidates like them. And so taking him down is really going to be great for our district, getting us healthcare, housing, and jobs for all. We can't pass those things. Even if we have Bernie Sanders in the White House, we need a Congress to back him up. So it's really important for those reasons, but also just kind of a symbolic and real blow to the system, saying the New Democrat centrist third way thing is done. It's over. It's not working, and we're replacing you.
Absolutely. What kind of organization, you come from the grassroots as an organizer, as an activist, as somebody who's played a lot of really significant roles in your community. What kind of base and grassroots organization do you have around you?
I have Our Revolution Washington, as well as the 2 DSA chapters in my district. And then since 2015, 2016, there's been it's a very large district, and across the entire district, progressives have been meeting each other. It started with the Bernie primary, meeting each other, getting positions in the local Democratic parties, networking, building organizations and infrastructure. And so that network of people who all met each other when Bernie ran are behind my campaign now, which is great, and especially, that combined with DSA, when DSA decides to do something, they really turn out and do it. So those are some of the organizations I have behind me.
Awesome. So I want to, loop back to climate, single payer, and housing. Those are obviously essential issues that you identified, but we're in a situation now where, at least in my view, I think we are literally we are at war with Iran. It's a question of how much it is allowed to escalate. And in addition to the danger and the wrongness of the, action we're in now, there's obviously a whole history that goes back to Barbara Lee being the only congressperson to vote against the original authorization after September 11th, and a whole global infrastructure of warfare, drones, executive power, that in addition to causing so much harm across the globe, and all of the problems associated with the military-industrial complex, has also been a symptom of Congress almost completely abdicating its responsibility. So when you think about, your role as a potential congressperson, what are you thinking very specifically with how we can avert something as catastrophic as this, and how even as you campaign, can you exert pressure on the many reactionary members of the Democratic caucus?
Yeah, well, number one is repealing the AUMF authorization. It won't come to me, but the AUMF, which was passed after 9/11, I think we need to repeal that, bring more powers back to Congress, and also be much more hard-nosed with funding. Mm-hmm. So my opponent, Derek Kilmer, he just voted for Trump's war budget. And, an amendment to repeal the AUMF was taken out of that. There was no kind of accountability in there. And so we need to have not just this kind of obsequious, knee-jerk, automatic caving to what the Republicans and Trump currently want in their defense budgets and their war budgets. And there's this kind of myth among Democrats that if they are not, gung-ho in the military, they're going to be perceived as weak. But I think it's actually weak to constantly cave on your values, to never stand up for people who need help, not stand up for the things you believe in. And so that would be my thing, is like any time that I am asked to approve a defense budget, I'm going to go through and make sure to look at what's actually in there. Is there any accountability? Because I think you're right. Congress has let a lot of its authority lapse and just kind of hand wrings. And, many of the Democrats who voted for Trump's war budget are now wringing their hands over Iran. It's like, you give him all this money, all this equipment, and then he uses it and you're upset.
Right.
It's
and no
illogical.
Accountability. Right. Absolutely. So, right. You mentioned single payer, Medicare for all, the Sanders, the real version, housing guarantee, and the Green New Deal. Talk about what those three issues mean to you, please.
Yeah, the Green New Deal is extremely important. I think that one has to be addressed because without it, some of the others may become moot, because with the climate crisis, it's an existential threat, as we see with what's happening in Australia right now. Mm-hmm. And it would be a huge deal for my district. There are tribes along the coast in my district that are having to relocate entire settlements. There are schools on tribal lands that are in tsunami zones, stuff like that. In Aberdeen, which is in my district, anytime the river floods, sewage comes up into the neighborhoods and people have to walk around sewage. So it would have a really material impact on people in my district to address the climate crisis. And then also the jobs guarantee would be huge, because we have a real lack of good paying family wage union jobs, especially after the timber industry collapsed. And then number two, Medicare for all, the real, like you said, Bernie Sanders single payer version, is critical for many reasons. I have a friend who had to get a double bypass surgery because he's diabetic and had gone without insulin for years. And the doctor told him, you absolutely would not have had this heart attack if you hadn't been going without insulin for years. Wow. And he's somebody who fell through the cracks. It was just awful. Yeah. And he, if he had been born a few miles north in Canada, he would have been fine. Right. So for just story after story like that, but then also addressing the addiction crisis, which, of course, it's an issue across the country. But in my district, we have two of my counties are the number one and number two counties in the state for highest opioid death rates. And we really need, there are people who literally die waiting in line for treatment. They decide they want to get clean and sober. They try to get treatment and they can't. It's just not available. There's one county where if you're on state healthcare, there's just nowhere in the entire county for you to go, only private. So we really need single payer that's critical for the addiction epidemic. And then third, the homes guarantee. Tacoma has the fastest rising rents in the country. People are getting evicted onto the streets, and regularly you hear about somebody who died on the streets. We really need to have national universal rent control, as well as massive. Because some of the conservative talking points about rent control are like, well, it would just go up. The rent would go up outside the area where you enact rent control. If that's even true, which is under dispute. Great, let's solve it by having national universal rent control. No holes in the leaky bucket. Right. And then a massive infrastructure building project, construct 10 to 12 million units, whether rehabbed or new construction of social housing units. And then it all starts to really tie in together, which I find really exciting. So let's say you have single payer Medicare for all. That means you can take any job, go to college, get trained, go to trade school. You'll always have healthcare. So then you can decide, what do I want to do? So I want to get trained up in this one field. Maybe it's construction of new green housing units as part of the Green New Deal. You're guaranteed a job because of the jobs guarantee. You can take any job you want and pursue what you want and do what you want with your life because of healthcare. And you're guaranteed a job and an education. So it really all starts to interplay together and make the country and my district better.
Rebecca, in the last minute here, please tell us all the ways that people can look into and get involved with your campaign.
Yeah, so you can go to my website, RebeccaForWA.com. That's RebeccaForWA.com. And my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are the same, Rebecca for WA. So number one, go to my site and sign up for my email list. And then number two, look me up on social media. And I'm pretty active, especially on Twitter.
Rebecca, I really appreciate your time, and we gotta get you in there and knock this DLC nonsense out. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. All right, folks, please look up Rebecca Parson, all the different ways you can find her on social media, get involved with the campaign. Certainly, this one, we're always looking at ones that have really serious, to the extent we can examine it, ground games. And there's a lot going on in this district with Our Revolution, DSA. So it's really important. There's a lot of momentum there. We're going to be live with the main show in about 45 minutes. Drew Makael is on. Matt Chrisman is on. We're covering a whole hell of a lot.